I'm right here in the closet.
We were poor students. And I would have worked, but I got pregnant.
This is my guest bathroom, and I decorated this myself. I love birds. I think birds have a really sweet sound. I even have recordings of birds on a tape that I sometimes play. These are things that you can do in your bathroom to just make it fun. This is another guest bath, but it's a full bath. The other one was a half bath. And this is a mural that I painted on the wall just to make it more fun. It's a mermaid, and it's I'm doing kind of the sea thing because there's a lot of water and baths going on in here. As some of you know, I love to do art. I do art and paint when I have time. It's kind of a relaxation and to keep me upstairs, as we say in Fascinating Womanhood.
So we want to talk about your history because we always talk about subjects that apply to right now, and we've heard a lot of stories about you and Dad right now, and we've heard some things from your past, but we want to go a little bit deeper because a lot of ladies have asked about how you started out and what, when you first got married, what were things like. So I'm going to ask you some questions about your first years of marriage.
Okay.
What was the first year of your marriage like? Like date nights, like where did you guys live? What were some challenges? Like all those kinds of things.
Well, remember, I was 19 years old, barely 19. And Bob was 23. And so we were really young. He only had 2 years of college, and he had to get a doctorate. So that's a lot of years after that. We were very poor, and we were poor students, and I would have worked, but I got pregnant very fast. And we had our first child when we were married 11 months.
Well, this is my engagement ring. See, we just didn't have very much money, and he felt like he sold his soul to get this, so it really means a lot to me.
We had, on our first anniversary, we took our baby girl with us to celebrate. We didn't have much money, so we didn't have a lot of dates. Our dates are usually like going to get an ice cream cone or something, because that was, we've never cared as long as we were together. And we never cared what we did.
Where did you guys live?
We lived at first in Santa Barbara, where I'm from. We lived there, and Bob worked there, and then we went back to school in Utah. We were just really poor students.
You had an apartment?
Yes, we had a really humble apartment with cement floors. I remember making Bob's spaghetti, and now I would never make that spaghetti because it was made with tomato soup and just these real simple ingredients. And we thought it was pretty good, but now I just think, oh, so not authentic.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Had simple things, and we didn't have much, and I didn't work because I had kids, babies.
So, well, in the first year, you had a little apartment and you were pregnant. What was that like?
When the first year, we lived with my parents in Santa Barbara.
Oh, you didn't have your own place? No,
our first child was born in Santa Barbara, so our little girl. And she's not a little girl anymore, but she was then. And we lived with my parents, and Bob worked. And he worked at a big department store, which is kind of cool because he's always loved clothes, and he was really good at it.
So what was it like that first year? I can only imagine living with parents and being newlyweds and being pregnant.
Yeah.
It must have been really challenging.
Well, it was great for me because my mother was my mother's. It would be harder if it was his family's house because my mom and I got along, and she helped me. I asked her all kinds of advice, and she helped me. I remember when she sewed a maternity dress for me. It was New Year's Eve, and we were invited to a party, and I had nothing that would fit. And she whipped this dress out in like 2 hours.
Wow.
She was amazing, though. She could make stuff without a pattern. She was.
Wow.
I don't have that skill.
What were some of the challenges that you've had as a newlywed in general?
Oh, immaturity.
Being 19.
Immature. I mean, I was mature compared to some kids, but I was really a kid.
Yeah.
Still a teenager. And all I knew is I was crazy about him. And fairly early on, I thought, I'm really immature. And Bob had lived a lot more. He had traveled and bought his own car and things like that. I'd never done any of those things. And I looked up to him. And I remember thinking, he deserves somebody more mature than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to pick myself up and make myself grow up. Just that he deserves it.
What do you think of those women these days? We hear this all the time that say, we can't get married yet because we can't afford to. Because it sounds to me like you got married with you didn't even have enough money for your own place.
Oh, we had nothing.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I don't relate to it because we wanted to be together. Mm-hmm. We just figured we'd have faith and work towards our goals, and at least we'd be together. It wasn't easy, but I found that most of the things I've ever done in my life that were worthwhile were not easy. So just say, so what? I don't care if it's hard.
Yeah.
Hard is fine. Work is fine. Work is good. The thought of, because he was Canadian, thought of us being separated by California and Canada was unthinkable to me. I wanted to be with him, and I'd be willing to be poor to do it. We did.
How did everything change after you had your first child?
Everything changes. I thought, my youth is gone. It's over. That's it. I was up in the night and I thought, I can't do without sleep. I have to have sleep. But I found out, no, I don't. It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And I was breastfeeding. I was really sore. It was the loss of freedom I still can remember. It felt like, oh my gosh. But that showed how immature I was too. But the hardest was when I had my third. Because then I thought, I've got my arms full. With one child, you can hold your baby. With two, your husband can hold. With three, it's like, and I thought, what if they all cry at the same time? Well, they weren't all the same age, so.
Yeah.
But sometimes they were sick all at the same time, and so was I, and that was really hard.
But what did it do with your relationship with Dad?
Oh. I mean.
How did that change?
Our relationship?
Because I'm sure you went through some growing pains of having small kids, brand new married. You didn't have a lot of time to yourselves before you had kids. So.
No, that's why we're enjoying it so much now. Our kids are grown, we think. And some of our kids have said, aren't you guys lonely? I thought, no, we waited all those years to have this time alone. Our relationship. Yeah. I've always grown closer to him, clung closer to him during adversity instead of apart. We have always been able to get together more. Like when we're going through stuff, we always felt like we were going through it together. Mm-hmm. And whether it was getting up in the night, sometimes it was really hard to have any private moments when I had a nursing baby in bed with me all the time. I know nowadays girls don't put their babies in their beds, but in our day, everybody did it. And I thought, what's the big deal? I would never roll on my babies, ever.
Yeah.
I had that instinct. And I think most of us do, the instinct that you just wake up.
So many women see it as an inconvenience that they are being interrupted in bed with their husband. Like they want to be alone with their husband. Yeah. And when you have kids, you kind of aren't ever alone. So did you feel
you have
like
to steal moments? And those moments are that much sweeter. And we knew that was temporary. Yeah. We knew it wasn't going to always last. And this was our child together. And it was very bonding to have a baby together. And every time we got to go out together, which was not very easy. When the babies were little, we always had to take them. I couldn't leave a nursing baby.
So now, when you were living with your parents, did they help you with your first baby, or did you move out by the time you had a baby?
Oh, they didn't. I was breastfeeding, so my mother couldn't take care of my baby in the night.
But like date nights and stuff.
Oh no way! I couldn't leave my nursing baby.
Mm-hmm.
I could never leave my nursing babies. I didn't have one child of 7 that would take a pacifier.
Yeah,
not one. So I was in trouble when they were nursing. I always had to take them with. And I figure, well, they won't know what we're saying because they're babies. And by the time they were old enough to know what we were saying, I'd leave them home. But we hardly ever had babysitters because at school, at college, we couldn't afford a babysitter.
What about your mom when you lived with your mom?
Oh, well, I only had the one baby.
Oh, then you guys got a place.
Then we went to college.
Okay.
We moved out and we were on our own.
So when the first baby was born, you got a new place?
Yeah, well, within a few months, yeah.
Within a few months, okay.
We went away to Utah and went to school, and Bob got his doctorate straight through.
Okay.
And it was years. And he took, I said in one video, one semester in graduate school, he took 25 hours in one semester.
Yeah.
And he got straight A's. But I didn't see him. He was either writing papers, studying, or gone.
So how did you navigate through the financial part of having brand new babies and he's in school?
I mean, how do we afford it?
Mm-hmm.
Student loans, very tight. I made a lot of things. I still do. I sewed a lot of clothes. I made bread. I cooked from scratch. I did everything I could to save money, which meant making a lot of things. And so I learned to, because I wanted to have better things than we could afford.
Instead of, that mindset that a lot of women I think today have, which is, I have to get a job because we can't afford this. I'm going to go out and get a job. You focus more on homemaking and how you can contribute to saving money by making things. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I always knew, I thought, if I go out and get a job, it means I have to pay someone to watch my kids, which means I have to leave them, which was hard for me.
Yeah.
And then I have to pay them. And I don't know what's going on with my child the whole day when that's happening. Plus, I still have all these things at home I have to do anyway. Whether I'm, like if I come home from work and I'm tired, I still have to cook. I still have to do laundry. I still have to clean the house. I have to do all those things and do that. So it just never balanced out that it was worth it. I guess maybe partly I was 19, 20. I didn't have a degree in anything that I could go make any decent. If I could make a really big salary and work half time, maybe I would have done that.
Right.
I'd always wanted to go to medical school, but I thought with babies, that's not really practical because I love my babies.
So can you describe what kind of a place you lived in when you had 3 poor kids? What was it like?
Well, the whole time we were in college, I think I was expecting my 4th when Bob finished. And so when we had the 4th child, we were actually out of school and we lived in Canada. That was his first job in Canada. And we were lucky. We rented a house that was on the edge of a lake and we felt really lucky because it was really cute. It's this beautiful lake in the backyard. It was nice. I mean, I liked it, but Bob worked really hard and he was gone a lot, especially at first. I was lonely because I didn't know anyone and I was a full-time homemaker, so I didn't co-workers or anything like that.
You guys didn't buy your first home until you had several kids.
Oh, yeah. We had 3 while we were in graduate school. So I had a lot of babies.
Because I think that's another thing I hear too these days is that a lot of the younger couples are saying, well, we can't have kids until we have a home and like we buy a home and stuff. And that's what I think is so interesting about this conversation is to just kind of hear all of the rules that you guys have broken in a sense.
I have found that children don't appreciate that you have a home before they come. Kids take for granted what is just given to them. I did. Well, my dad was out of school because my parents couldn't have children. For the first 6 years they were married, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then when they did, my dad was finished with dentistry. And so they were already out of school making money before they had any kids. And so I don't have any memories of them being poor, but they were terribly poor when they were going to dental school because there was no student loans in those days. If you think I've got to have a child, I've got to have a home, I've got to have 2 cars, I have to have all these things, your kids won't appreciate that you have those. You might, but your kids won't. They'll take them for granted. And it doesn't hurt kids to have to be poor for a while, to have to do without things and have, not have as many clothes. It doesn't hurt them.
Can you tell us about like maybe the lowest point you had? Building a family, going through these financial struggles, like were there any moments where you were just almost kind of felt like, wow, this is
hard.
There
were several moments. We had 7 kids, so there were several of them. One of them was when I had 3, and I was still very young. I was 24. Some of these some young women now, I had 7 by the time I was 32, and some have not had any, which is fine. It's just that we're very different. But there was when I was still very young and had a lot of little kids and felt like my youth was over. And then the other one was because financial situations don't just, now you have a job and everything's perfect from then on. Not true. At least not true for us. We didn't inherit any money. There was a point where we almost went bankrupt. We had some financial reversals and a lawsuit pending over us, and it was really scary. And we thought we'd lose the house we just built, and it was terrifying, actually. But where some couples, it splits them apart, it made us closer. We just kind of clung to each other. And we were so poor, we couldn't afford meat. And so Bob, there was a pond on the land that we lived in. It had catfish in it. And he would go fishing and catch a catfish, and we'd have this catfish for dinner. And I've never been able to eat catfish since.
Oh.
It reminds me of that. That was a real low point. And then we had this separate house that we bought as an investment, and it was really cheap. Some of you aren't going to believe it, but when we bought it, it was a 7-bedroom old Victorian for $20,000.
In Missouri?
Yeah. And Bob felt like we should get this, but we lived in Canada, and I thought, being a landlord when we're in another countries, but he said, just trust me. So I trusted him. It ended up really saving us, because later, it was an old house. Later, we sold it right at the critical time, and I remember Bob said, you can go to the grocery store and buy anything you want. And that feeling.
Wow.
When I had so many times gone to the grocery store and thought, oh, everything I bought was scratch stuff, like a bag of rice and some potatoes and peanut butter and things like that. Nothing that I would buy.
Wow.
Since then, we have a big family. Remember, 7 kids. I've learned to store food, and I was lucky enough that we had an old lawnmower room that we turned into a pantry. And so I store all kinds of things. Pasta, freeze-dried stuff's a good idea. And you know, it's come in very handy, because during this pandemic, I actually already had about a year or 2 worth of toilet paper already stored, because it doesn't go bad. So I find a deal on it and I buy it. So I even have an extra refrigerator down here, and canned milk and just all kinds of things. And I make my own bread, so I have wheat and flour and yeast and all kinds of stuff. So anything you can do to store food, you may not have as big a place, but you can store some somewhere, and you'll really be glad you did. And I use this.
What point did you guys kind of feel like you were kind of consistent and stable, and like really felt like, wow, we're actually building this life together and things are working?
Well,
and
life is like this for most everybody. I mean, like, we didn't inherit some big fortune or anything, but life is a little bit like this. When the most stable we've ever felt was since 2010.
2010.
Bob finally learned it's better to have several irons in the fire and not just have one thing that you count on.
Mm-hmm.
He's established a fantastic reputation. People like his work, and he got more well known. It doesn't mean that we couldn't go through a disaster again. Anybody could.
Yeah.
But in 2010, we've been married since 1969. It's not, we weren't poor the whole time, but it was, we had 7 kids, and sometimes they were in college, sometimes we helped them when they had different problems. Sometimes we couldn't. Life is a learning experience, and it is for everybody.
You kind of felt like since 2010, you guys have been more stable. So is that how you felt like you were able to get time for Fascinating Womanhood? Because you started Fascinating Womanhood not that long.
No, not 2014 is when I started writing.
Yeah.
Well, first I inherited it from my mother.
Yeah.
But
because she passed away
in 2009. Fascinating Womanhood, by then, she had retired, and it was kind of like a neglected child. It wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, at first my sisters and I got together and thought, is this dead?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So I really felt strongly about it because it had really helped my marriage. So I agreed. My sisters really hoped I would do it. So I agreed to take it and thought, this needs another book. There's so much more information. And my mother's book was very basic, which is good, but there was so much more. And that's when I did it. Plus my kids were grown. I did have the time. I didn't have to be like my mother, who had 8. None of us were grown. She got up at 4 a.m. to write her book. I didn't have to do that.
So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about the different seasons of life that you've had and the kind of hardships and stuff, how would you say you've kept the spark in your relationship all that time through all those? I mean, we talked about basically being starving. You talked about bankruptcy. You talked about living with your parents. You talked about so many different moves and things. How did you keep the spark in your marriage?
The principles of Fascinating Womanhood. That's why I wrote this other book, because it's absolutely been the bedrock of my marriage, these principles. But every day, literally every day, starting from the first day that I really fell in love with him, I look at him every day and I'm grateful for him, and I feel grateful. I look at him and think, I can't believe he married me. He actually married me. And because when we were dating, I thought, wow, I sure wish I could marry him. And even though it wasn't a very long time, and we only dated a few months before we got engaged, the feeling of gratitude for him and appreciating him makes everything about our weaknesses or things easier to overlook.
Do you think it's safe to say that, you look back on all these things you went through, and like you said, 2014 is when you inherited Fascinating Womanhood. Do you think it's safe to say...
like I agreed to take it on.
Yeah. Do you think it's safe to say that you kind of looked back at your journey with it and said, I want to write a book about that because that just saved me through all those things that I went through?
Being married to Bob and having all the extra information that I got about psychology, the brain, and things I'd studied myself and learned myself. After my mother gave me the foundation of it, made me realize I need to share some of this because I have this, and I don't know very many other women in my personal life who have the kind of marriage I do.
Yeah.
And it isn't because I'm so amazing. Of course, he's pretty amazing, but it's because of these principles, because I've seen them over and over, not just help marriages, make them deeply strong, which is what we all want.
Well, and the first Fascinating Womanhood was not written based off of a lifelong marriage, like experience of marriage for multiple years. It was built on, she wrote it when she was still in it with young children.
She didn't have the principles. She discovered some basic ideas of them from those original pamphlets called Fascinating Womanhood that were for single women. They were just, when you read those, you think, wow, she got her book from this, because they were just sort of ideas.
Yeah.
She had the whole divided woman that she had was totally hers.
Mm-hmm.
But that helped her marriage, because her marriage was kind of stale, is what she said. It wasn't bad, but it was not great. I've never had that because I've always had Fascinating Womanhood. Yeah. So I've always had a Fascinating Womanhood marriage because of her. She gave that.
Well, I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't realize is they say, well, what's the difference between this book? I don't understand. Is this the sequel? What is it? And, we can go on and on about, well, yes, it's a sequel. And yes, there's similarities. But I think one big one that you just pointed out is that your book is written off of 50 years of being married and having all these children and going through all these things, and those experiences that you went through are in a way in that book. If you think, if you really pay attention to all the things you've just said, all of those things are in this book. Whereas the first book is just, it's not as not as complex because
my mother was learning them.
She was still learning them.
Yeah,
she wasn't it's almost like you were an expert writing a book about an expert a subject of yours versus she wrote a book trying to become an expert on something that she later became an expert on.
The principles were brand new for her when she wrote her book. She was still learning about them. I wrote mine after a whole childhood and marriage of actually living those basic principles, not perfectly, because nobody's perfect. And you don't have to be, by the way. I had those, but then there's so much more. This stuff about the brain and understanding men and girlishness and all of it. Some people have said a whole book could be written about girlishness.
Yeah.
And I did even more than my mother did with it, but it could be a whole book.
There's a lot of kind of dainty prints right now.
This is I think would look good on a lot of women, but not on me.
Is it because of the boxy shape?
My bust is too big.
So it's too boxy.
Yeah.
Because busty women don't look as boxy.
Busty women don't look as good.
Those are really fun. It doesn't even do it justice in the pictures.
No, it doesn't.
This is a really pretty.
This is really soft.
Pretty, and it's so sheerness. You can kind of see my hand through it, so I'll definitely have to put a tank under it. That's pretty. I like that.
This is cute. I like this.
I like this
really
kind
soft.
of. You can kind of get, if you get close, you can see. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty. And they have it in blue. Oh,
the blue's nice.
The blue is nice. They have it in dots, which is cute.
Oh, I like the dots.
I like the dots.
That's pretty, and it's only $25. It's pretty. So it's kind of like a pull. It's just a pullover.
Yeah, it's a pullover.
It's really pretty though.
This is cute.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that.
$28.
Oh, that's cute.
Which one, the red one? That's real pretty.
It is cute. I don't think I'd look as good in this because of this line here.
Because of the bust.
The bust, yeah.
I know, and there's a lot of silhouettes right now that are not heavy bust friendly. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah,
This one's better with the V-neck.
yeah, that's better.
And there's a print.
Cute.
There's a print back here too. That's. Oh, that's swoopy.
Bad.
See, that's bad for a big bust too.
Yeah, and this it cuts off there.
But I like that blue one.
The blue one is.
That's real pretty.
Is like a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
But it's not pizza clothes.
That's real pretty, actually.
It is.
I like that a lot.
I love this color.
It's a pretty color.
It's a pretty color, but these are going to be too short on me.
Yeah.
Like me in flood pants. He calls them flood pants.
Crops. He doesn't like you in crop pants.
Yeah, he calls them flood pants. Cherry, you just gave me this for Christmas. This dress. I love this.
What do you like about things like
flows,
that? Flowy.
It's comfortable. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling that day. It's very comfortable. I love this kind of stuff. Now, I'm not sporty.
It's romantic.
I'm romantic.
Oh, where did you get that?
Ooh, Bob spoils me. He loves to.
Well, you guys went through so many difficult times.
I remember feeling like, oh, I haven't had anything new for months. It's just the same 4 things.
When you were younger, where did you get that?
Anthropology.
Oh, that's Anthro? It's really pretty.
This is from China.
Ooh.
But I'm about to change this because this is too short. It's not that flattering, so I'm going to cut it under here and make a skirt.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, because I love the skirt, but the top is not so much.
It's pretty.
I don't have a small enough waist to do that, but I wish I did. Those days are gone. Okay, so that's okay. I have a lot of tops and pants because it's practical. I live in a climate like some of you where it gets cold, and so I don't always wear dresses. I love this.
That's pretty.
You may have seen me in this.
Yeah.
Some of my stuff is super cheap from China. Almost everything I get is on sale. And when I say it's from China, that means it's like $10.
Yeah.
Free shipping. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
When you go shopping, you kind of are looking for a romantic style for the most part.
Bob always pulls out all kinds of styles for me, but the ones that I go for are ones that are a little more romantic in style. But you know, he'll say, "Oh, I really like this. I really like you to wear it," and I wear it.
Yeah. Okay.
He loved this. And I thought, it's boring. But it has buttons on the sleeves. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of nice. He likes this from me. And so I said, okay. And I like it okay, but it just doesn't excite me like the romantic stuff.
So sometimes you get pieces that just he's really excited about, and then sometimes you get pieces that you're really excited about.
And this one is I inherited from my mother. Her brother brought this white sapphire to her from South Africa when he was there as a young man, and my sister had it made into a ring. She loved this ring. Okay, each one of these is going to be one that one of my daughters inherits. I need one for each, and I have 5 daughters.
That's so cute.